The letter that came too late. The night was quiet. Not the usual quiet of Los Angeles, filled with distant sirens and traffic murmurs, but a stillness that settled deep into Keanu's chest. He sat in his modest home near the hills, surrounded by shadows and old memories. A worn-out book lay open beside him, forgotten the moment he noticed the envelope, small, aged and yellowed at the edges, tucked carefully into the day's mail stack. It had no return address, just his name, handwritten in a style that seemed hauntingly familiar. His hands hesitated as they reached for it. Keanu had faced more pain than most people knew. He had lost too many people, carried too many silences, and yet something about this letter felt heavier than the rest. He carefully peeled it open, the paper crackling like old leaves. He unfolded the single sheet and began to read. Dear Keanu, I know this might be strange, maybe even selfish, but I've carried this for 3 decades now. I wasn't sure you'd ever read this, or if you'd even remember me. The handwriting was soft and emotional. His heart skipped. It couldn't be, could it? It's me, Lily Thomas, from high school. We sat next to each other in Mrs. Halpern's class. You used to lend me your notes when I was too sick to come in. You probably forgot, but I never did. Keanu leaned back, his breath shallow. Lily. Her name alone pulled open a door inside him that had been locked for years. Lily with the quiet laugh, the crooked smile, and the sketchbook always in her hand. He hadn't just remembered her, he had loved her once, in the quiet, fumbling way that only a 17-year-old boy could. The letter continued, each line trembling with truth. After high school, I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't. I watched you leave for Toronto and then become who you are now. I was proud, I always was. But I also regretted everything I never said. Especially one thing. You changed my life, Keanu. You didn't know it, but you did. He stopped reading. The weight of the words pulled him into silence. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like whispers from the past. It had been 30 years. 30 years without a single word from Lily. Why now? He stood up slowly, walking to the window. The hills were dark, the city lights blinking far away like stars that had forgotten how to shine. The world had moved on. So had he, or so he told himself. But inside, something stirred. He returned to the letter and read the final lines. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you mattered. And if by some strange chance you do remember me, maybe one day write back. I don't know how much time I have left, but it would mean something, more than you know. With warmth, Lily, he sat in that silence for hours. The letter trembled in his hand as if it carried more than just words. It carried a moment in time, a feeling unfinished, a voice lost to the years. Why had she said, I don't know how much time I have left? Was she sick? Was this a goodbye? 1,000 thoughts ran through him. Regret, longing, confusion. He had walked red carpets, lived through tragedy, and yet this one letter undid him more than any role ever had. He stood, walked to his old bookshelf, and pulled out a small box from behind a row of dusty books. It was one of the only things he had kept from his school days. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a photo, and a tiny pressed flower. He opened it. The photo was of Lily, smiling with her eyes closed, drawn, on the back in her handwriting, to Keanu. You always made the hard days soft. His chest ached. He picked up a pen. He hadn't written a letter in years. But this one, he had to. Not because he owed her, not because of guilt, but because something in her voice reached him across time, and touched the part of him he thought he had buried with all the other goodbyes. He wrote slowly, each word drawn from a place inside him that still remembered 17. Dear Lily. Yes, I remember. But just as he finished the sentence, his phone buzzed. It was a private number. No caller ID. Something about the timing felt strange. He picked it up, hesitant. "Hello?" he said softly. A voice on the other end paused before speaking. "Mr. Reeves? I'm sorry to call like this. My name is Dr. Fern. I'm calling about a woman named Lily Thomas. She listed you as an emergency contact. She asked us to reach you if things got worse." Keanu's heart froze. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "She's in the hospital. She's been fighting stage 4 cancer. She didn't want to burden you, but she's asking for you." Keanu closed his eyes. Just moments ago, Lily was a memory in a letter. Now, she was fighting to live and calling for him. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, he replied, "Tell her I'm on my way." He hung up, the unfinished letter still lying on the table. His past wasn't behind him anymore. It was waiting in a hospital room, and he wasn't ready. But he was going, fast. A face from the past, a truth in her eyes. The ride to the hospital felt longer than it was. The city rolled past Keanu in a blur of quiet headlights and neon signs, each one flickering like a memory he couldn't quite hold. Traffic lights changed, without meaning, and the engine hummed beneath his thoughts. He hadn't realized how tightly he was gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. Lily. He hadn't spoken her name aloud in decades, but now it echoed through his chest like a bell someone forgot to stop ringing. He pulled into the hospital parking lot, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows across the pavement. Everything felt cold and too clean. Inside, the nurse behind the desk looked up at him and blinked twice, clearly recognizing his face. She didn't say anything about the fame, though. Not here, not now. She just nodded and pointed down a hallway. "Room 314, she said softly. "She's awake, just barely." The hallway was long and quiet, and each step slowed him. Part of him was afraid, not of illness or death. No, Keanu had faced those demons, but of what he might see in her eyes. Would she recognize him? Would she blame him for the silence? Did she still see the boy who once gave her his jacket on? A rainy afternoon, or had time replaced that boy with a stranger? When he opened the door, everything else disappeared. She was there, pale, smaller than he remembered, with sunken cheeks and eyes that still somehow carried fire. The tubes around her looked too large, too heavy, but she smiled. God, she smiled, and in that moment, time cracked open like it never moved at all. "You came," she said, her voice barely a breath. He stepped forward, unsure, but drawn by something deeper than memory. "Of course I did," he said. "You sent a letter." She let out a soft laugh, one that trembled through the air. "I thought you might ignore it. I almost didn't send it." He sat beside her, not touching her hand just yet. It felt sacred, that space between them. "I never forgot you," he said, his voice cracking. "I tried to once, but it didn't work." She turned her head slowly. "You became everything, Keanu. Movies, magazines, billboards. And I stayed behind. I drew pictures. I taught art at a school that never had enough paint. And then I got sick. And all I wanted was to see you. Once." His throat tightened. "I would have come sooner if I'd known." She nodded. "I didn't want pity or some dramatic scene. Just, I wanted you to know you mattered to me, even after all this time." There was silence, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with years they hadn't shared, and a quiet respect that didn't need to speak its name. Then she reached beside her bed and handed him a small notebook. Her hands trembled, but her eyes never wavered. "I've been writing letters," she whispered, "to you, every year, for 30 years. Keanu opened the notebook slowly. Inside were pages of her thoughts, drawings, moments frozen in ink. Birthdays she imagined for him. Movies she watched in crowded theaters, whispering to herself, "That's my Keanu." Nights she cried, and mornings she smiled because she dreamed he was happy. His hands shook. "Why didn't you send any of them?" "Because they were mine," she said. "And sometimes, love is quiet. It doesn't ask for anything back." Tears slid down his face without warning. Not the kind you prepare for, but the kind that bursts through you when something breaks open inside. He pressed the notebook to his chest and nodded. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not forgetting me. When the world tried to make me forget myself." She smiled again, slower this time. "Will you read them?" "I'll read every word," he said, "and I'll answer them, all of them." She closed her eyes, peaceful for a moment. But then something shifted. Her body tensed, her breath staggered. Machines beeped louder. Nurses rushed in. Keanu stepped back, helpless as her body fought to hold on. "Stay," she whispered, eyes fluttering. "I'm right here," he said, grabbing her hand now without hesitation. "I'm not leaving again." They stabilized her barely. The doctor came in, serious and quiet. "She doesn't have long," he said gently. "Days, maybe hours." Keanu nodded, his hand never letting go of hers. "I'll be here." But outside that hospital room, in the cold hallway, the man who had watched him from the street stood by the window, camera in hand, a printed photo of Lily in his coat pocket, and something darker in his eyes. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "He's here," the man said. "They're together, and you're not going to believe what's about to happen." As Keanu sat beside Lily, reading her letters aloud in a trembling voice, the door creaked open once more. But it wasn't a nurse. It was someone else. Someone from Lily's past, and he didn't come in peace. The stranger who carried old wounds. The man who entered the room didn't speak at first. His footsteps were slow, but heavy. He stood in the doorway like a shadow that had taken human shape, and Keanu felt the air shift before a single word was spoken. Lily's eyes opened slightly. When she saw him, her face did not light up. There was no surprise, only sorrow. The kind of sorrow that comes from long-ago choices that never stop echoing. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "You asked me not to," the man replied, his voice low and controlled, but not cold. "But when I heard you were dying, I thought, maybe I should ignore that request." Keanu stood slowly. He wasn't sure if this man was a friend or something else. There was a weight between them now, something unspoken but thick with history. He didn't speak, waiting instead for Lily to explain. She closed her eyes for a moment. "Keanu," she said, "this is Jonathan. He's my brother." Jonathan didn't look at Keanu. His eyes were fixed on Lily. There was pain in them. Not anger, but the kind of pain that curdles over time into blame. "She never told me about the letters," Jonathan said, voice shaking. 30 years and not a word, not a hint. And now I find out you've been writing to a man who vanished from your life without a goodbye?" Keanu flinched, but didn't defend himself. Lily raised a hand slightly, the motion small but clear. "Stop," she said. "It wasn't his fault, and it wasn't yours either. I kept you both apart." Jonathan shook his head slowly. "Why?" Lily turned her gaze to Keanu. "Because some love lives better in silence. I didn't want you two to become enemies over something that was never anyone's to blame. Not back then, not now." Keanu stepped forward, his voice steady now. "I didn't know about you," he said to Jonathan. "I didn't know she had family." Jonathan looked at him, eyes narrowed. "And what do you know now? You show up after 30 years and sit at her bedside like you belong here?" "Keanu," didn't flinch. He met the man's eyes. I don't know what I am in her life now. I only know she called. And I came. Lily's voice broke through the tension. He was the only one who ever made me feel like I wasn't invisible, she said. Back then, when Mom and Dad were fighting, when we were hungry, when you were off trying to protect me, he was the only one who saw me. Jonathan turned away, hiding his face for a moment. I was trying to build a life for us, and I missed everything important. No, Lily whispered. You saved me in ways I never told you, just like Keanu did. The silence that followed wasn't bitter. It was exhausted. The three of them sat in it like survivors of a war that was never declared. Then Jonathan stepped forward and laid something on the table. It was a worn photograph, old and creased. It showed Lily and Jonathan as children, sitting in a field. Beside it, taped to the back, was a note. For when she forgets who we used to be. I came to say goodbye, Jonathan said, and maybe to forgive you. If you can forgive me, too. Lily nodded, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. She reached out and touched his hand. I never blamed you. Not once. Keanu watched them, feeling like he had been handed something, too sacred for words. This wasn't just about love. It was about healing. About finishing stories that were never given proper endings. But the peace was short-lived. A knock came at the door, light at first, then firmer. Jonathan opened it. A woman stood there, young, maybe in her 20s, with the same eyes as Lily. She looked at Jonathan, then at Keanu, then at the frail figure in the hospital bed. Is she Lily Thomas? The girl asked. Her voice trembled. My name is Anna, and I think she might be my mother. Jonathan turned to stone. Keanu's breath caught. And Lily. Lily simply closed her eyes as tears began to fall again. I told you, she whispered. I told you there were things I never said. As Anna stepped into the room, her fingers clutching a worn adoption folder with Lily's name on it, Keanu looked at the woman he thought he knew and realized her story was far from finished. The daughter she never held. The room fell into a silence so thick it seemed to press against the walls, as if even the hospital itself had paused to listen. Anna stepped closer, slow and unsure, the folder trembling in her hand. She looked like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but had still never found the words that could carry the weight of it. Her eyes moved between Jonathan, Keanu, and finally Lily, the woman lying pale and fragile beneath thin sheets, the woman who, until a few weeks ago, had only existed in her dreams and fragments of paperwork. Lily's voice broke the silence, hoarse and barely a breath. I always wondered if you would find me, she said. I prayed you would, and feared it all the same. Anna's lips quivered. She took another step forward. I didn't come here to hurt you, she said. I just needed to know who I was, where I came from. They told me I was adopted when I turned 18. I searched for years. Then last month, a nurse called. Said you were in here. Said I might want to come soon before it was too late. Jonathan turned sharply toward Lily. You never told me, he whispered. You never told me you had a child. Lily's eyes were glossy, but her voice found strength. Because I couldn't bear to speak the truth, not even to myself. She was born when I was barely 18, before you came back, before Keanu left. And no one knew, not even him. Keanu's heart sank. The weight of the past pressed hard against his chest. Was she mine? He asked softly. Lily looked at him. Not with fear, but with a softness carved by time and pain. I don't know, she said. I never took the test. I was too scared. And once she was gone, once I gave her up, The question didn't seem to matter anymore. All that mattered was that she'd have a better life than I could give. Anna stood in the middle of the room, her breathing shallow. Her eyes, so much like Lily's, searched Keanu's face, searching for something familiar, something she might recognize. In herself. "I'm not here to take anything from anyone," she said, "but I need to know if this piece of me fits somewhere." Keanu stepped forward. Not as a celebrity, not as a man built by cameras and scripts, but as a person who had spent a lifetime losing people he loved. He looked at her gently. "You belong," he said. "Whatever the truth is, you belong." Jonathan sat down, head in his hands. His voice cracked under the strain. "I spent all those years trying to protect you, Lily, and I never saw how much you were carrying alone." "You did protect me," she said, reaching for his hand. "You protected me in ways you'll never understand. I just didn't know how to protect myself." The nurse entered then, quietly checking the machines and the monitors. Lily's heart rate was slow, too slow. Her body was beginning to let go, and still, she fought to stay awake, to say everything she had hidden inside for 30 long years. "Anna," she whispered, "I want you to have the notebook." Keanu looked at Lily in surprise. "The notebook?" he asked. "Not the letters to you," she said. "There was another one I never showed anyone. I wrote to her, to Anna, every year on her birthday, drawings, poems, memories of the life I imagined she was living. It's in the drawer. Bottom shelf." Keanu found it. Old, bound in blue fabric with a cracked spine and a faded sticker on the front that read, "For the one I never stopped loving." He handed it to Anna, whose hands shook as she held it like a fragile piece of a forgotten dream. She opened it. Just one page. "Happy 10th birthday. Today, I imagined you dancing in the rain. I hope you're not afraid of thunder. I hope you laugh. When lightning strikes, tears streamed down her cheeks as she pressed the notebook to her chest." "Thank you," she whispered. "Even if it's all we get. Thank you." Keanu stepped closer to Lily, kneeling beside her bed. "You did more than survive," he said. "You loved, even when it hurt." Lily turned her head slightly. Her breath came slower now. "I got to see her face. I got to see yours. That's more than I ever asked for." The monitor beeped gently, a lullaby only hospitals seem to understand. Jonathan leaned forward. "Is there anything else you need, Lily?" Her eyes fluttered. "Forgiveness," she whispered, "and peace." But before anyone could answer, a loud voice echoed from outside the room. "Sir, you can't go in there!" The door swung open. A man burst in, mid-40s, sharply dressed, face twisted with anger. He held a crumpled photograph in his hand. One look at him, and Keanu knew. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone who had been searching for Lily, too. "You thought you could just disappear?" the man growled, glaring at Lily. "You thought I wouldn't find you?" Everyone turned in shock. Anna stepped back instinctively. Jonathan moved, protectively in front of Lily. Keanu stood, eyes narrowing. And Lily just closed her eyes. "I knew you'd come," she said faintly. The man stepped closer, raising the photo. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "And now they'll all know." Keanu looked at the man, his body tense, ready. "Who are you?" he asked. The man laughed coldly. "I'm the part of her story none of you want to hear, but it's time you heard it anyway." The name she never said aloud for a moment. No one moved. The hospital room that had just witnessed a reunion of blood and forgiveness now trembled under the weight of this new presence. A man whose words carried something bitter and unfinished. Keanu instinctively stepped between the man and Lily's fragile bed, while Jonathan's fists clenched at his sides. Anna, notebook still clutched tightly to her chest, stood frozen, trying to make sense of the sudden storm that had entered the room. The man's eyes were sharp and wet with rage. But underneath the fury was something else. Something sadder, more broken. He held the photo in the air, his voice trembling now as much from emotion as from anger. "She never told you about me, did she?" he said. "Never mentioned my name once, after everything." "Who are you?" Jonathan asked, his voice low and threatening. The man looked down at Lily, who had turned her face away. "Go on," he said. "Tell them. Or should I?" She coughed softly, her voice just a whisper. "His name is Elliot. He was Anna's adoptive father." Anna blinked. "What?" Elliot's face twisted. "Not legally, but I raised her. I paid the bills. I stayed when everyone else left. And when she asked where she came from, you know what I told her? I lied. I made up stories so she wouldn't feel unwanted, because you never came back for her." Keanu turned to Lily, stunned. "You knew where Anna was?" Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded slowly. "I watched from a distance, when she was little. Then I stopped. I thought it would hurt less." Elliot stepped forward. "You don't get to be the hero now. You abandoned her, and now you're dying, and suddenly it's all hugs and apologies?" Jonathan moved fast, grabbing Elliot by the arm. "You need to calm down." But Elliot shrugged him off, his voice rising. "I gave 30 years to a girl who never knew me as her own, because her real mother was too afraid to love her. And now she walks in here, reads one notebook, and it's like none of that matters." Anna finally spoke, her voice shaking. "You lied to me, Elliot. For years." He turned to her, pain flashing in his eyes. "To protect you. To protect you," she repeated softer. "Or to protect yourself from the truth." He reached out, but she stepped back. The notebook in her hands felt heavier now, not because of what it held, but because of everything it represented. "You're not the villain," she said, "but you don't get to decide how I feel about her. Not anymore." Elliot looked shattered. Keanu's voice came next, steady but firm. "She made mistakes. All of us did. But that doesn't mean she didn't love her, or that she doesn't deserve peace now." Elliot laughed bitterly. "Peace? Is that what this is?" He turned back to Lily. "Do you know what it's like to hold a child who screams for a mother you'll never be? To watch her cry on birthdays asking if her real mom would have remembered?" Lily sobbed quietly now, her hands trembling. "I did remember," she whispered. "Every birthday, every year." Elliot dropped the photo on the table. It was a picture of Anna at age 6 holding a tiny cake. Written on the back was a single sentence in a child's handwriting. "I hope my real mom sees me one day." The room broke. Jonathan sat beside Lily, tears slipping down his cheeks. "You should have told us," he said. "We could have helped." Keanu turned to Anna. "Do you want to know the truth?" he asked. "About everything?" She looked at him. "What truth?" He hesitated, then walked to the corner of the room, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out a small envelope, unopened, stained slightly with age. "I found this in my old apartment," he said. "It was never mailed, but it was addressed to you, and the date, it's from 2 months before you were born." Anna reached out slowly. The envelope had her name, handwritten. The writing matched Lily's notebook. She opened it, unfolding the letter inside. "My dear Anna," it began. "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but if you do, please know you were never unwanted. Never. I let you go because I believed the world would be kinder to you than I could be. I was young, scared, and alone. But every heartbeat since has whispered your name. I love you. I always have." Anna's legs gave out, and she collapsed into the chair, the letter pressed to her lips. "She did love me," she said, her voice crumbling. "She did." Elliot looked away, ashamed, defeated. "I'm sorry," he said. I thought it would be easier if you hated her." Jonathan walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Hatred never heals. Only truth does." Keanu looked at Lily again. Her eyes were barely open now, her breath slower than ever. He sat beside her, took her hand, and whispered, "She knows now. She heard it from you." Lily nodded weakly. "Then I can go." But the moment held a final twist. Anna, still holding the letter, looked up. "There's one more thing," she said. "Before I came here, I sent in a DNA test. I didn't know what to expect. But it came this morning." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded document. Handed it to Keanu. He opened it. His hands shook. The words were simple, undeniable. Parental match, 99.9%. Anna looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You're my father." Keanu dropped to his knees, not out of fear, not out of shock, but because the world had just given him back a piece he never knew was missing. Before he could speak, Lily gasped softly. Her hand tightened in his one last time, and her heart monitor let out a long, flat tone. The room went still. What remains after goodbye, the sound of the flatline, was unlike any other sound in the world, a sound so final, so unforgiving, it seemed to drain the room of all color. Keanu didn't move at first. He stared at the monitor, as if willing the line to change, to blink again, to stutter back to life even for 1 second more. But it didn't. Lily Thomas, the girl he had once loved in silence, the woman who had hidden her pain so carefully for 3 decades, had taken her final breath while holding his hand. A nurse came in quietly, turned off the machines, and placed a hand gently on Keanu's shoulder. "Take your time," she said softly, then left the room, closing the door behind her. Keanu bowed his head, forehead resting on the edge of Lily's bed. The weight of everything, the letters, the years, the daughter he never knew, the love that never truly faded, came crashing into him all at once. But he didn't cry out. His grief was quiet, deep, like a river that runs far beneath the surface. Anna stood across the room, holding the letter against her chest, the DNA test still in her pocket. Her legs trembled as she stepped forward. She reached out and gently touched her mother's cold hand for the first time. "I found you too late," she whispered. "But I found you." Jonathan placed a blanket over Lily's legs and sat at her side, eyes closed. "You can rest now," he said. "We'll carry the rest." Elliot leaned against the wall, his face pale and tired. "I thought I was protecting Anna," he said quietly, almost to himself. "But the truth was what she needed all along." Keanu finally lifted his head. He looked at Anna, and something unspoken passed between them. Not just shock or confusion or even relief. It was something older, something rawer. It was recognition. "You look like her," he said, voice rough. Anna gave a soft laugh through her tears. "I was hoping you'd say that. I don't know what kind of father I can be now," he said honestly. "But if you'll let me try, I want to know you." She nodded, eyes shimmering. "I want to know you too." They didn't hug, not yet. The space between them was still filled with newness, with fragile threads just beginning to weave. But something was already shifting, a connection stronger than anything either of them had prepared for. The funeral was small and quiet, held on a soft morning where the clouds rolled like gentle waves above the hills. Lily had written her wishes long ago. No grand speeches, no somber suits, just flowers and truth. Jonathan gave a eulogy that shook everyone in attendance. A raw, broken remembrance of a sister who had suffered in silence, but never stopped. Loving, Keanu spoke too. Not as an actor, not as a star, but as a man who had lost the first person who ever truly saw him. He read one of Lily's letters aloud, the one written on her 23rd birthday, when she found out she was pregnant, unsure of what to do. "I wanted to tell you, Keanu. I really did. But what if you didn't love me anymore? What if you had already left me behind? So I kept it. I held it close. And now, it's the secret that shaped everything." People cried, even those who didn't know her, because the pain was real. The silence was familiar, and the courage in her words burned straight through. Anna placed the final flower on her mother's resting place, a single white lily. "Goodbye," she whispered. "I'll carry your voice now." Weeks passed. Keanu and Anna began meeting at small cafes, in parks, on quiet walks where words weren't always necessary. He told her stories of Lily when she was young, how she used to draw galaxies in her notebook margins, how she once skipped class to feed a stray dog for a week straight. Anna shared her own stories too, about the school plays she acted in, the nights she stared at the stars wondering if her mother was out there, missing her too. They didn't force anything. The bond grew gently, like spring through frost. Some days were awkward, others filled with laughter so deep it surprised them both. Jonathan checked in regularly, quietly becoming the bridge between old family and new beginnings. As for Elliot, he sent Anna one final letter. No begging, no demands. Just a single line. "I hope you find peace where I could not give it." She never saw him again. On what would have been Lily's 61st birthday, Keanu and Anna sat beneath a tree in the hills, the same place he and Lily once escaped to as teenagers. They opened the final page of the notebook Lily had written. It read, "If they ever meet, I hope they see that love does not always arrive on time. But when it comes, even if late, it is still love, and it is still worth everything." Anna leaned her head on her father's shoulder. Keanu looked out at the sky and whispered, "Thank you for bringing her back to me." There was no applause, no camera, just a man who had once lost everything and was now learning how to begin again.